Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
Hello and welcome to the Horse Show here on Wisp Sports. This is Season 4, Episode 17, and I'm Chris Stafford. Our guest this week is jumping rider and sports psychologist Erin McGuire. Erin has been an equestrian all her life and competed at national level as a teenager, but she struggled with the demands of her sport in terms of the psychology, the mental game, and it affected her performance so much that her trainer suggested she look into sports psychology, and there was immediate improvement in her performance. And it also triggered a new energy and a new enthusiasm for the sport. Of course, this affected her confidence. She realized that she had to do something about it if she was going to help her horses. And as she focused on their fitness, she also realized that she had to work on her own mental fitness. And as well as having some help herself from a sports psychologist, she decided to take this one step further and actually train in sports psychology. And to that end, she achieved a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in sports psychology. And then she became a sports psychology professional. She established the remarkable Athletic Solution business, and now just a year later has already run lots of workshops and boot camps to help a number of riders with their mental game. And Erin joins me now. Erin, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, sports psychology is really an interesting topic, isn't it? Because no matter which sport you look at, it's an essential part of your performance as an athlete, regardless of sport.
Yes, ma'am, I absolutely agree. It's half the battle, if not more.
Well, it certainly is. And, I don't know if you follow soccer, Erin. Do you follow soccer? Have you seen what the women have been doing?
Yes, very vaguely. I saw the U.S. team win the World Cup, and I actually dabbled in soccer myself as my first sport, so I'm slightly familiar with it.
Oh, good. Well, I want to start there because when, of course, they won the World Cup for the second year running and 4 times now, and what comes across when you watch that team is their conviction and their mental preparation, their belief in themselves and that they are going to win. I think the mental game and their mental strength was as important, obviously, but as noticeable as their performance as players. Do you see that when you watch this particular team, the USA, versus other teams?
Yes, absolutely. They have the belief in themselves as a team that they can win. It doesn't mean they win every single game, but they believe that they are competent and capable and just as competitive as any other team in the whole world. And that confidence, that positivity leads them onto the field and really sets the stage for their performance. Win or lose, they're ready to go.
And it's a certain edge that they have, not just as a unit, and as a team, which obviously, that shared amongst them makes the confidence even bigger, but it's as individuals as well. And we're talking about an individual sport here with equestrian sport, and it's something that you found was a big challenge to you, and you decided to do something about it, was attack your mental game. Tell us a little bit about what was happening to you, Erin, as a rider, as a competitor, when you realized that you need to turn this around.
Yes, ma'am. So I grew up riding in the hunters, and I started, grassroots with hunter jumper, backyard, cross trails, local level, get up at 5 a.m. and go to a one-day horse show. Eventually, that led to bigger and better things, and I ultimately found myself riding with Jet Towel, Eliza Boyd, and I had the incredible fortune of having a wonderful, wonderful junior hunter, probably the nicest horse I'll ever have, my absolute dream unicorn. And as much success as we had, we also had our fair amount of downfalls. And I say we, really me, because I found myself in a unique position where I had the horse to be successful. I was going to these big horse shows and I was being successful. I was experiencing success, and it got to me. I would go to, I don't want to say local level anymore, but, double A, single A horse shows in the kind of regional level, and incredible success, great rounds, great ribbons, scores that would win anywhere. And the moment I got to a bigger horse show, I would crumble. And it wasn't because I couldn't do it. I certainly had the horse, I had the backing, I had the trainers. I just didn't believe I could do it. And it really caused a lot of heartbreak in my junior career. Unfortunately, by the time I figured it out, I was aging out of the junior hunters and actually shifting into university as well as the jumper ring. But how I came into sports psychology is my trainer, Liza Boyd, pulled me aside one day, and it was after a particularly difficult Winter Equestrian Festival. I had the 2 highest scores in the large juniors for the season. I won both classes. Scores were in the 90s, and those are the only ribbons I got out of the 3 weeks I competed there. And Liza sat me down and was like, "You're better than this." I really like to read. I'm very literary. And she gave me this book and said, "I want you to read this. Let me know your thoughts." And it changed my life. It truly has. That book was Mind Gym by Gary Mack.
Yeah, it's interesting how the mental game can freeze you. It's Wimbledon tennis right now, and you often hear the commentators, and we as the spectators can see how the players can actually freeze on important points, that their mental game just, maybe it's experience. A lot of the times it's experience, I think, and we've watched some really young players come through, as we often do at these tournaments, and then what kills them in the end and knocks them out is that mental game, that they actually freeze in some way. They block. They just tighten up so much when they're about to serve. Did you sense some of that sort of thing happening? I'm wondering how that would have manifested to you as a rider.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. I would get to these bigger horse shows. I would have these high hopes, really. It was actually kind of an issue with goal setting. I would have result goals. I wouldn't have performance goals. So my result goal was to score as high as possible, place as high as possible. Of course, with that comes the performance, but I didn't take the time to emphasize the performance, emphasize what was in my control, emphasize what I could tangibly do to create the result I wanted to have. And because of that deficit in goal setting, I would send myself into this frenzy because I was too busy thinking about the outcome, the things I couldn't control, rather than the process. And that, exactly like you said, it would cause me to freeze, and I would short circuit before I'd go in the ring. And I could find 7 jumps. I unfortunately couldn't find 8. And it was the same mistake every single time. It was right lead going away from the in-gate. And that's a mental mistake. That's not a physical mistake.
Right. And then once you got past that, then, Erin, what happened in your mind that you realized, oh, gosh, I've just missed that jump, or, missed that turn, or whatever it may be? Was it like an on-off switch for you?
So I'd make a mistake, and it's almost like pressure's off, game's over. Some people respond to that in okay, now I got to, giddy up and do it better. I lacked a little bit of resilience in those settings, and I would lose my confidence. I'd lose my motivation. It would get me real down low, and my overall life outlook really became a little bit negative. And I was fortunate that I would ride the high wave, at most shows of the year. I experienced an incredible amount of success, but come final season, indoor season, I was struggling, and so it kind of made my whole outlook not so great.
And so you read this book, which was life-changing for you. What were your biggest takeaways that you felt were reachable? And these were goals that you could set yourself and were attainable. How did you feel that you had to take, your evolvement, and your growth forward then, psychologically?
The immediate takeaway I had was the idea of solution versus problem thinking, or another way to look at it is problem versus negative. And the gist of it is, don't say don't. The word not is not your friend. If I'm chatting with you and I'm like, Chris, don't look behind you. Don't look at the horse in the schooling area. What's the first thing you're going to do? Whip around and see what you missed. Well, the same thing goes for our mental game when we're riding. For me, if I said or thought, don't ship the right lead jump, don't pull and add one more stride, all I was thinking about was pulling and adding and shipping and making that mistake. Now you're talking about visualization. I'm visualizing, mentally rehearsing myself making this mistake over and over and over again. So when I went in the ring, I'm thinking, don't make a mistake, don't pull, don't ship. And that's the first thing I did. So the first takeaway was fixing that vocabulary in my head, the semantics of it. So instead of saying, don't pull, I'm telling myself, go forward. I'm telling myself, ride up. So now I'm going in the ring with a plan rather than something I want to avoid. I'm working towards something I want to accomplish. There's my goal. When I'm cantering up to the jump, I'm physically able to act accordingly rather than riding from a place of fear and not wanting to make a mistake.
And that, of course, will be reflected in the way the horse is going immediately. Did you see some changes in your horse's training and in their performance then as a result of this shift of attitude from you?
Absolutely. I was very fortunate to have this incredibly nice hunter, so I can't take too much credit. I had great trainers. He had great training from the ground up, and he was a quality animal himself. However, I was able to give him a better ride, and because of that, I was able to produce more results for us together. This horse had had a lot of success with both my trainer and the riders before us, and now I was able to join that success, which was very rewarding for both of us.
Now, obviously, you benefited from it, and you've grown enormously, I'm sure, as a rider and as a person, too. But at what point did you think, well, you know, this is great, but I could be helping other people, and I need to do something about that? Just talk about that process, Erin.
So when I read this book, I was hooked. I was sold. I was graduating high school, and I wanted to study psychology because I didn't really have any other plans. So I remember sitting in my Psychology 101 course, and there was a prereq, and kind of thinking, all right, here I am, psychology. What does this have to offer? Where can I go with this? So 4 years later, I found myself really interested in a lot of behavioral psychology, not so much the neuroscience stuff. I still was very passionate about sports. I acquired my undergraduate degree in psychology. I then pursued my master's degree in sports psychology. I was actually considering getting a second master's degree in counseling. I was accepted to the program, went in for orientation, very quickly found out I was not passionate about counseling. I was passionate about athletics. And I actually took a full 2 weeks, sat down with myself, really soul searched. Erin, does this look hard and inconvenient? Or is this truly not where your passion lies? And it was ultimately the latter. While this was all going on, I had a minor setback myself. I had to have shoulder surgery, and I was out of the game. I was out of the sport. I was in a very, very, very low place because everything in my young perception, everything I loved had been taken away from me. So in that time, I also did a lot of soul searching, and the idea of my business, Remarkable Athletic Solutions, came to me. I'm passionate about psychology. I'm passionate about athletics. I'm passionate about health and fitness, and I had a lot of time on my hands to pull myself out of a negative headspace, and I ultimately decided these are my passions. This is what I want to do with my life, if not for myself, then to give back.
Well, then, of course, the next step is convincing people to pay you money for your services to
Right.
build a clientele, right? Convince them that you're a bona fide sports psychology. I can help you, and this is what it's going to cost. That's a big stepping stone for anyone going into business, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
So how did you convince people? Did you start with your friends, the community around you, your own network? How did you go about it?
Yes, ma'am. I started truly with grassroots stuff, social media. I created my business and put something out on Facebook and said, here's what I'm doing. I'm looking for 10 athletes. I'm going to charge you significantly less. I just need success stories. Well, I need stories. Hopefully they're successful. And that's where we started. I acquired my first group of 10 clients or so. And admittedly, it was a learning curve in terms of how am I going to present this information in terms of, you know, okay, it's one thing to learn it in theory. It's another thing to put it in practice with a living, breathing human being. But I had the incredible good fortune of working with this small select group of clients, and then word of mouth, and then their trainers got on board, and then different publications picked me up, and then my own trainer support me, and all of a sudden it grew. And I'm still learning. I'm only a year in, but I'm really passionate about what I do, and I'm really behind mental skills coaching. I think it's life-changing. Even if you're not in the athletic headspace, it affects your daily life. So I'm 100% behind it.
Absolutely. It's about performance, whether it's sporting or otherwise. So let's talk about some case studies then, Erin. You know, we're talking about mostly riders here. Are you dealing with athletes from other sports at all? Do you have any clients there?
Yes, ma'am. The majority of my clients are riders. As you said before, I started where I was comfortable and where I was familiar, where I had connection. I have expanded to some team sports. I mostly work with individual athletes, but yes, mostly equestrians, however, some non-equestrians.
And what would be the sort of typical problems? I mean, everybody's different, of course, just like training horses. But in terms of the you know, maybe a common thread with riders, having your own experience to draw on, of course, and what happened to you when you were riding, what do you see mostly, you know, people are dealing with? And also, is there an age group that seems to be stuck in that, you know, that sort of progression of, you know, getting just stuck in in not able to move forward with their riding?
Sure. I believe my youngest client is 12 roughly, and my eldest is over 60. One theme I've experienced among all ages and stages of life during my time in this profession is confidence. To some extent or another, whether it's confidence to jump around the small pony course, or confidence to go in the Grand Prix ring, or confidence to find 8 jumps in a row in the adult hunter ring. It manifests in several different ways, but it is a central theme.
And of course, it's that ring, isn't it? The occasion, the competition, maybe peer pressure. There's a lot of things that contribute to your performance, no matter what your sport and what your level of competition. How do you help people primarily then, especially young people, you know, maybe you're teenagers there that you're dealing with that are going through confidence issues outside of their sport, just as teenagers growing up?
Sure. So when I present confidence, my signature service is what I call a mental skills boot camp. It's 6 sessions. We start from the ground up. Confidence is week 5 of those 6 sessions, and I saved the best for last, because I really, truly believe in order to fully understand confidence, you have to do your homework first. You have to have your background information first. So the first few weeks are all about positive thinking, what you can control, goal setting, a few other things. Of course, then we introduce your typical sports psychology things such as self-talk, visualization, breathing exercises. Then we get to the meat and potatoes of resilience, mental toughness, and confidence. In presenting confidence and how it can not only affect your sport, but for your life, I am such a huge proponent on you can control your confidence, because confidence is a way of thinking, right? Confidence is a belief. It's a belief in your abilities. It's a belief in yourself. It's a belief in the progress, the process. It's not an emotion, or at least the way I present it, we're looking at it in terms of it being a belief. Well, one of the things that comes up in boot camp is that you can control your own thoughts, words, and actions. Well, if you can control your thoughts, you can control your confidence. It's a very empowering way to think. It does not come overnight. What I try to do is shift my clients' attention, or the focus, I should say, to the process, to how can they, on a day-to-day, invest in their confidence? How can they log evidence of their confidence? Even if it's something as simple as today I rode my green horse and I kept his attention on me and we had a productive ride. That's going to set you up for your goal of, okay, now we're going to do the baby greens. Okay, now we're going to do, you know, the national derbies. Okay, now we're going to what have you, move up the levels.
Yeah, it comes back to what we talked about earlier about the U.S. soccer team. You know, their total confidence is just amazing. It's so empowering once you have that, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about some other things that you do in boot camp then. Aside from developing confidence, are there sort of specific, like, individual issues that you're dealing with, you know, that are unique to people that you could share with us, Erin?
Sure. So the boot camp curriculum is organized into 3 different sections, if you will. The first one is awareness, all about self-awareness. How are you thinking? What are you thinking about? How often do you think about it? Does it consume you? How does it affect your performance? So we talk about things like how I mentioned the positive versus negative. Rather than saying don't pull, think ride forward. Rather than saying don't chip off the right, think ride up to the base. We talk about what you can and can't control. The big overlying theme is you can control yourself. You can't control anything else, truly. Not the judges, not your competition, not the weather, not the course, even to an extent, a 1,200-pound animal. So rather than focusing on, oh, what if my horse spooks, or what if I make a mistake? Well, what if your horse spooks? You can't control that. You can control that you shorten your range, you keep your leg on, you keep your horse's attention on you. Well, what if I make a mistake? You can't control the future. You can control, again, that you're putting in the best ride of your ability by doing your mental prep, by taking lessons, by preparing. That is kind of the first, as well as goal setting, the first week of boot camp. We then switch gears to more self-awareness, but to a bigger extent. So how does feedback affect you? Under what conditions do you focus the best? What are your intentions going in the ring? Like we talked about to begin with, the U.S. women's soccer team goes onto the field thinking we can win this. Doesn't mean they do, but they believe they can. Same thing. If you enter the ring, I can win this class. I have the skills. I have the practice. From there, we then talk about, again, your typical visualization, self-talk, breathing exercises, things that you can now manipulate your awareness. So we've made you self-aware, and now we're switching gears from awareness to application. From there, then we talk about bigger picture, resilience and confidence. I spend a full week on resilience, or a full session on confidence. I believe those are very important things to talk about and very important to instill a good foundation. So to answer your question, I would say resilience and confidence normally are the soft spots. Those are normally the heavy hitting sessions, which is why I save them for the end, because at that point I've now built a relationship with the client. I've now helped them set a foundation, and when we get to the heavy stuff, they're prepared for it, rather than diving in head first to, please, tell me your confidence issues. And that's not as productive. That's too aggressive of an approach.
And the other thing, which of course it overrides everything in a way, is concentration. And I know from myself, when I was very young and riding, at local level even, I'd get so distracted by, the next show, the occasion of the show, that it would affect my concentration. And I may be confident and I may be excited, as a young person, very excited about, the competition, the anticipation and the whole thing, showing off my pony, whatever it may be, But the concentration would be an issue then, because of the distractions. And you maybe have the confidence, but how do you pull in the concentration? And how do you smack yourself on the back and say, "Okay, come on, pay attention." Do you know where you're going? I even actually have to admit, one time I went into a ring and I had not walked the course. And I had completely forgotten to walk the course. And I made it up as I went along. I just rode around and saw where the numbers were, and off I went. And it was a miracle. I didn't admit that to anyone until well after the event.
Oh, that's fantastic. Wow. So concentration, we start talking about it in the first session of boot camp, and we continue the conversation in the second. So I am a big proponent of the Yerkes-Dodson curve, which is the graph of arousal versus performance. You have arousal on the independent axis, and you have performance on the dependent axis. And it's the bell curve. So if you have low arousal, you have low performance. You're bored. You're falling asleep. You don't have enough arousal to garner your attention. Likewise, on the other side, or contrarily, on the other side, if you have too high of arousal, you also have low performance. This is where you see people choking. They're over aroused. They have too much attention, and they're also making mistakes. So we want to get you to the middle of that graph. Roughly, if you want to put on a scale of 1 to 10, it's like a 5 or a 6. So we start sessions by know your numbers. Where are you? How are your thoughts contributing to this? So if you think you're going in the ring at an 8, that's too high. What can we do to get you back to a 6? Now that looks different for everyone. So that's session 1. Moving into session 2, we talk about focus style. The old school train of thought is, 10,000 hours of practice, eat, sleep, ride, breathe, horses, do, and that's going to make you great. For some people, yes, that school of thought absolutely supports them. For others, that is way too much. And it actually takes away from their performance. I am one of those people. It's called external focus style. So if you think horses, sports, all things, all day, and don't get me wrong, horses are my life. I mean, this is part of my identity. But this was my mistake as a junior, was all I had at online school. All I had was the horses. I had nothing else. And so when I made a mistake, it didn't just affect my performance, it affected my life in all aspects. One of the best things I ever did was I started teaching group fitness classes, and it gave me something else to do besides teaching, or besides riding, I'm sorry. It gave me something to teach. It gave me something to do. So this external focus style, it has to do with distractions at a horse show. So for instance, I have a Grand Prix horse, and he is 15 two hands on a good day, and he's a little psychotic maniac. He and I have the same experience. We've done what each other has done. And no one told him he can't jump Grand Prix. No one told me I can't either. So we kick on and get it done. That being said, let's say the Grand Prix goes at 5 o'clock at night. If I were to sit and think Grand Prix, Grand Prix, Grand Prix, Grand Prix all day long, I would implode. I would short circuit at the in-gate. I probably wouldn't even go in the ring, truly. So instead, I use distractions to help me manage my arousal relating back to that Yerkes-Dodson curve. So for me specifically as a case study, I'll go to the gym in the morning, and then maybe I'll go exercise my horse, and then I'll help my trainer set jumps. I'll do something else besides fixate on what am I going to do to win the Grand Prix tonight. And ultimately, by taking a step back, it sets me up for success when I do enter the ring.
And of course, if you think about eventing, Erin, of course, show jumping is one thing, or equitation, hunter jumpers. That's a single class, or maybe a series of classes over time. But with eventing, you've got one phase after the other, very different environments in terms of the pressure and the intensity. Even when if you take going from dressage then to cross country, you've got a bit more space. Not only environmentally, where you are, but also in your head. You may get nervous about the actual phase. And then, of course, show jumping are different again, coming back to the arena. And I'm wondering how, if you've dealt with any event riders, keeping that focus, keeping calm, keeping the concentration, and all of those things that you were just talking about in between those phases.
Yes, absolutely. I have worked with eventers before, and I completely agree with you. It is a different sport in its own compared to just show jumping or just hunters. It's exactly the same principles. You just break them up individually. So, for instance, knowing your numbers, if you need to be at a 5 or a 6 on that Yerkes-Dodson scale, that might look different for you. Like your 5 in dressage might be different than your 5 in show jumping. It's no different than my, arbitrarily speaking, 5 is different than yours. I give an example of, I know a particular equestrian, they have to be coming into the biggest finals in second place with everything to lose and one thing to gain, and they're going to shine. That's when they're going to pull out the most extravagant performance of their life. If I was in that position, I would probably puke. I can't handle that. Versus, someone else might need to go first in the order and just not need to know. So how that applies to, for instance, eventing would be, if you know dressage, you need to be pretty mellowed out. We would start your mental prep on how to psych you down, on how to relax you, on how to get you calm and feeding off your horse, feeding off your horse and have your horse feeding off of you. Then we would switch to cross country. Okay, maybe you need a little bit more giddy up. Maybe you need a little bit more drive, a little bit more fire, a little bit more liquid courage, as I call it. There you go. So we would change your mental prep for that. Now, again, it's going to take a lot of giddy up from the rider themselves, because now we're talking, you don't have a day in between. You have now. Ultimately, the onus is on you, and that comes down to your self-awareness.
Self-awareness, a major part of this. Erin, I think this conversation could go on for a very long time. We could talk about so many things and just get deeper and deeper, couldn't we? But I'm really glad that we were able to find each other and have this conversation. And maybe I could get you back on to do some segments about this, because I think this would help so many riders. Just give them some tips. What do you think?
Yes, ma'am. I'd be all about that. I'm honored to be on this. So thank you for reaching out.
conversations from the world of women's sports. This is Wisp Sports Radio.
And if you'd like to find out more about Erin's business and the services that she offers, you'll find a link in the show notes accompanying this episode, as always, on our website at wispsports.com. Just go to the Listen tab at the top menu there and drop down to the Horse Show. Now, if you have any comments or questions, would like to recommend anyone that we should have on the show here or any of our programs at Wisp Sports, you can drop us a line to info@wispsports.com. And you can also join in the conversation, as always, on our social media channels at Wisp Sports. Until the next time, thank you for listening and supporting women in sport everywhere as we turn up the volume on women's sports.